Not only did she constantly make fun of our appearance, believing she was the prettiest of us all, but the worst part was we couldn't even deny it. She did inherit our mother's genes and was actually quite attractive. On top of that, she would also make fun of weird things like the majors we chose, our line of work, and other stuff. One time at Thanksgiving, we got into a major fight because she straight up told Percy that he was going to be an unemployed burden on the family just because he was a literature major. Another time, we didn't speak for weeks because she told me that if I kept working so many hours every day, I would never find a boyfriend with my eye bags. She said no one wants people who aren't attractive and can't even give them time. This is just the kind of person she is, overly boisterous, egoistic, and constantly belittling people around her. She has always been this way, and this behavior was only encouraged by our mother. My dad would turn a blind eye, but my mother used to laugh at the things Molly said, no matter how hurt the other person felt. She would always pass it off as a joke, even though we could tell from Molly's face that she was serious. If we tried to retaliate, my mom would say we were being sensitive. Molly had our mother wrapped around her finger, and we hated her for that. 8 years ago, after my father passed away, we started drifting apart. Percy and I saw less of our mother and Molly. In spite of the fact that our father also favored Molly, maybe not as much as our mother, but still to some extent, he was the glue that held the family together. Once he was gone, Percy and I didn't feel like visiting Molly and our mother for the holidays or seeing them as often as we used to when our father was sick. After his death, we only met at family events hosted by others, occasionally on Thanksgiving, and maybe Christmas some years if we felt like it. We were honestly better off for it. They didn't try to keep in touch either, and since my dad was well off, and my mother too, they had enough money to get by. Percy and I had built lives for ourselves separately. It felt like Percy and I were on one side, and my mother and Molly were on the other, with a wall between us. Personally, I like that wall. That's how the relationship has been between the four of us, and I don't think they should have any expectations from me because I don't have any from them. Recently, though, I learned that things might be different on their end. A couple of weeks ago, I helped Percy out with his medical bills after he fractured his ankle. Since his insurance only covered hospital bills, I had to take care of other expenses like his medication, physiotherapist visits, and hiring a full-time nurse to help him out since he lives alone. He tried to convince me not to pay, as he could afford it, but he was between jobs, and I didn't want him to spend his money until he had established his online magazine, which was why he quit his teaching job. Besides, I'm the CFO of a company, and we're doing well financially, so money isn't a problem for me. I was glad to help my brother. But when my mother and Molly found out, they thought this was a free pass to ask me for anything, expecting I'd just hand it out like I'm Santa Claus. That's why I'm in this situation right now, because I said no to helping Molly buy her first apartment. Naturally, this pissed both her and my mother off. 3 days ago, Molly called me while I was working, saying she found an apartment she really liked and wanted to buy. Now that she was 28, she said it was embarrassing to still live with our mother, and she needed my help paying for the apartment. She could only manage half the price since it was a penthouse, and they're insanely expensive. She knew I helped Percy, so she wanted a favor too. It was bizarre because we've barely had proper conversations for the last 8 years. Every time we did meet, it was mostly out of obligation, and even then, she struggled to be nice. Now she thought I'd just agree to pay for her first apartment? For context, Molly is a freelance graphic designer, and I'd respect that if she did any work. She's never been to design school, doesn't have a degree, and I don't think making a couple of posters for our father's business, that he didn't even use, qualifies her as a graphic designer. She can pretend all she wants that she only works with exclusive clients, but those clients are mostly family, and even then, she only gets jobs because my mother forces people to hire her. It's a hobby at best, not a job, and it's no surprise she's lived with our mother until now. I told her straight up that I wasn't going to help. She's 28 and can find a real job to pay for her apartment herself. She argued that I helped Percy even though he had money, and nobody was helping her, so as the oldest, it was my duty. I told her the situation with Percy was different because he's between jobs and has a good relationship with me, one he's bothered to put effort into. That's not the case with her, and I don't need to help her out. I didn't say all of this, of course. I just said no and hung up. She tried calling a few more times, but I muted her and ignored her for the rest of the day. When I got home, my mother called, and she was pissed. I expected it because I knew saying no to her daughter would make her mad. I was ready for a fight, but in the beginning, she just whined about how unfair everyone was being to Molly. She said she didn't expect me to play favorites among my siblings and complained that Molly had found this apartment after searching for a long time. You can now watch the second part by clicking share and more.